Well, hello there, and welcome to Idea to Launch Show. My name is Lisa Zufall. I will be your host today, and in studio I have a very special guest. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Studio Americana. It's the Twin Cities' premier audio facility for content creators. In other words, it is the podcast studio for the Twin Cities. We are over here in Golden Valley, Minnesota. They have a full range of comprehensive services for creating podcasts and live streams. They have professional consulting, so you can call Ian, the founder of Studio Americana, and ask him questions on how and why and should. If you have any questions about what you should do with your podcast or anything else that you'd like to do here, he's a great resource for you to get in contact with. They have turnkey voiceover studios, auto editing for any level of project, and they are fully staffed by experienced broadcast professionals. You can host live or recorded shows, and you can communicate with guests or engage your audience with interactive phone services and call screening. They also do live webinars. So to learn more, give Ian a call at Studio Americana, 612-272-7970. Again, that's 612-272-7970. And now I am just excited to welcome Hot Lou to our show today.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Lisa.
He is the founder of Evergreen, and I asked him for an introduction, and he said, just put the founder of Evergreen. But can I tell them, at least from my perspective, of what I believe?
Yeah, let's actually do that, and then I can do some corrections or something.
Awesome. Okay. So Lou is, I believe, a mentor. He is a very successful businessman in the Twin Cities metro area. He has an entrepreneurial spirit. He's got a breadth of knowledge when it comes to businesses and getting your startup set up for success. And I think that this podcast is going to be fun for me. When I was thinking about who are some of the great resources in the Twin Cities metro area, I think of you as one of them. And I know I've tagged you a few times with questions, and I appreciate you just being available. So, any corrections there that you'd like to make?
No, I think that was very complimentary. I appreciate that.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
It was, I believe it's true.
Well, I kind of think of myself as, there's like no off switch for the kind of teaching side of me, right?
Yeah.
We were talking before we got in here about my coaching.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, I've thought, how long am I going to be doing this coaching? And it feels like I'm always in my last season, and every single year I'm like, I need to do it one more year.
Yeah.
And even when I've got a long break, I can't even imagine myself coming back. But 1 minute into coaching, and I coach Ultimate Frisbee at the youth level and adult level, and just 1 or 2 minutes into it, I'm like, I can't believe I ever thought I wasn't going to do this anymore. And like you said, when I meet with other entrepreneurs and other people that are even working on projects, I can't help myself but, look for opportunities, look for introductions, and just try to be helpful. I think that's just in my nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's amazing. So we met at an event. I think it was EO, correct? And then we met again
That's right.
at Mini Bars. So there are different events and resources happening all over the Twin Cities for entrepreneurs and startups. And if you run into Hot Lou, just shake his hand and say hello and tell him that you heard him on the podcast, and he'd be happy to talk with you, I'm sure. So you have a product called Evergreen. You want to tell people about your product?
Yeah, Evergreen is a social media marketing automation tool for small and medium businesses that don't have the resources or expertise or budget to run their own social. So, I like to think of it kind of like dentist offices or real estate agents, churches, things like that, where there's an absolute need to have a social media presence,
Mm-hmm.
but most of those organizations or solopreneurs,
They have nobody in place
they have nobody in place, and in some ways can often be exploited by a 23-year-old who, excuse me, that comes in claiming they're a social media expert and needs to get paid $800 a month to run their social media. And I built this tool that I think often will do 90 to 95% of their job, or sometimes even better than that, just by setting up something that automatically publishes for them.
Mm-hmm.
You fill up an Evergreen content library. And for those listening or watching that don't know what I mean by that, Evergreen content is this term that was probably coined about 8 or 9 years ago, I think, that roughly means content that is not going to expire. So
Mm-hmm.
whether it gets consumed by, a viewer or a reader today or 3 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
it should be equally relevant.
Mm-hmm.
An example of non-evergreen content would be saying, Merry Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's only going to be relevant during the holiday season or Happy 4th of July.
Right.
Those types of content are not evergreen. On the other hand, if you're a real estate agent and you've got like 7 tips on how to repair your credit,
Mm-hmm.
and you put up an image that has like an infographic on how to do those sort of things, that's the type of evergreen content that a lot of solopreneurs, a lot of small businesses, even medium businesses can rely on for almost all of their publishing in the event that they don't have anything that's
Right.
new and relevant. So they can fill up a content library like that and have hundreds of images at their disposal to make sure that they're publishing, very regularly, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even a couple times a day. And, rather than staring down at their Facebook page, unsure exactly what they're going to publish
Right.
every single day, and, having that burden of needing to come up with something, if you've got this evergreen content
Yep.
library at your disposal
Right.
and you've got a tool that just automatically turns on like Evergreen, that can be very, very useful for people.
Right. And
Yeah.
I agree because you asked me if I would be interested in being a beta. So I
Yeah.
did a launch right now is on the beta version of Evergreen, and
Oh,
we've been on it
terrific.
since we met
Oh,
at
terrific.
Minibar.
Oh, that's great.
And so what I would like to do is give you a testimonial for Evergreen,
Oh,
if I may.
fantastic.
Is
Yeah,
that good?
that would be
Okay.
great.
So when I first got signed up, I had no idea what I was doing. So I went through your tutorials, and he has tutorials that will help you walk through step by step on what you need to do, which was fantastic. So I got it all set up, and it started running. And I only put up, I think, a week's worth of content because I'm like, well, let's just check it out and see how it
Yeah.
goes. I have a whole month now. And what I love about it is that I can do a month at a time. And those posts actually get more visibility than any of my other posts.
Yeah. And I love to tell people that sometimes when you're faced with that burden of trying to come up with something that's new and relevant and kind of newsworthy,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not a copywriter, if you're not a marketer, if it's not in your blood, you just end up just kind of spewing what you think is self-promotional
Mm-hmm.
and is going to, raise the level of awareness of your company. But if instead what you're doing is putting together something that you ask yourself, what is going to be relevant today and 6 months from now,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to tend to fall in a category where the viewer or the reader, it resonates with them a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more. And that's why the evergreen content seems to perform better than something that tends to be self-promotional.
Right. It's incredible. I'll have like 16 views on something that I self-promote during the day or something. I see an article, I'm like, this is fantastic. Who is going to love this? And I'll share it out. I'll get 16 views. But the evergreen, they'll get 147, 210 with some cases. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm just letting that thing roll.
And people will often ask me, like, what's the number one thing that I can do to make my social media work a little bit more? And I tell people, you just need to publish more often.
Yeah.
And I just see the look of fear roll over their face.
Coming up with the content and figuring out, and planning that out.
It's hard, yeah. And when you tell them you need to publish more frequently, it's it's already hard enough for them to publish maybe 2 or 3 times a week. But now if you've got this evergreen content library and it's going to perform better for you,
Mm-hmm.
I tell people, if you publish more frequently and you think about using a big mix of evergreen content in that, you're going to find literally overnight your reach is going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do
It's
that
true.
over a long period of time, you're going to surprise yourself because there's going to be like 1 or 2 posts that perform way better than the second or third best post of the month. And that does 2 things for you. One, really gives you a good indicator of the types of content that resonate really well with your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, a lot of times people will spend money on their paid media, on messages that they think need to get out. Whereas I think, and there's a lot of evidence behind this, that
Yep.
this is true, that you should really just pour gas on the flames of the content that's already working very well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great to put out a bunch of organic content, figure out what works well, and then put money behind that content that's already resonating, and you're going to find your budget's going to go a lot further,
Right.
or you can spend a lot less money and get the same reach that you were on this other message that might not have resonated with
Right.
your audience.
How did you even come up with this idea?
Well, I was scratching my own itch. So I was the founder of a company in Minneapolis here called Eighth Bridge. We had a very typical, I think, venture capital funded, hyper accelerated type of startup. We built the very first storefront ever on Facebook. We were
That's
software
amazing.
as a service. We had primarily tier one retail clients. So we were working
And
with,
what does tier 1 mean?
the Internet Retailer 500.
Okay.
A bunch of those companies that were on that list were where we were working with. So we were working with
Wow.
Target and Best Buy and Ticketmaster and Delta Airlines, 1-800-Flowers, Chanel. The list goes on. And we were basically enabling their storefronts that were on their normal website, allowing their fans on Facebook to purchase.
Okay.
And, it was really on us at the time to invent social commerce. So we'd already made it possible. Now we were trying to make it work. And on top of that, it was like 2009, 2010 at a time where the narrative around Facebook was like, how do you monetize Facebook? How do you monetize your Facebook audience?
Right.
And they would often ask us for tips and tricks on how to really run their content. So I started making a bunch of pages on my own that were kind of community driven or cause driven or just for fun or whatever, and experimenting. So I did lots and lots of experiment across a couple dozen pages.
I read about you and one experiment that you did with your birthday.
Yeah.
Tell the audience about that.
Yeah, so I mean, that was really the experiment that helped me understand the value of evergreen content. So
Okay.
I one day, just on a whim, it was my birthday, December 17th. It was my birthday, as everybody is very familiar with. You get several hundred happy birthday messages, depending on how many Facebook friends you have,
Yep.
from, obviously your closest friends, some acquaintances, and some veritable strangers, right? Some people you maybe befriended like 6-7 years ago and haven't talked to since high school.
Right.
And I thought, that was really, not that everybody doesn't already think that, but I thought that it's funny. But the next day, on December 18th, I decided, what would happen if I changed my birthday to the current day? And so I did that. And sure enough, I got another like 100 happy birthday messages from people. Well, I thought that was particularly funny. And I got a couple of messages from people like, hey, what's going on? We know it's not your birthday. But on December 19th, 2 days later, I said, you know what? I'm going to keep doing this until I get no more sincere happy birthday messages.
Wow.
So that was my rule. I was going to change my birthday to the current day every single day until I got no more sincere happy birthday
How
messages.
long did it take?
Like 100 days.
Wow.
And during that process, the big takeaway was about 2 or 3 weeks in, I started getting happy birthday messages from people again that were sincere, and they had either forgotten
Yep.
or just they mindlessly consuming this or whatever it was. But it made me realize that your birthday is kind of this evergreen piece of content. It's not evergreen from the sense that it's always your birthday, but people are always going to respond to it.
Yep.
And I started applying that principle to a bunch of the Facebook pages that I was
Okay.
running. So rather than trying to come up with, I think at the time I was managing like 25 different Facebook pages, rather than coming up with brand new content multiple times a day, every single day for 25 pages, I said, I'm going to start building libraries of evergreen content and then just reuse and recycle content
Right.
over and over and over, and almost never come up with new content, just use evergreen content. So that was really the foundation of this concept of using content that I could recycle, reuse, and for years on end. But I just got tired of pointing and clicking and scheduling content over and over every single day. So
Yeah.
I was like, why don't I just put all of this in a Dropbox folder, write some software that just randomizes it, pulls something randomly from the library and publishes on a schedule. So I did that and never thought anything of it. In fact, Eighth Bridge had sold, so I was kind of looking for my next thing. And at the time, I was actually trying to fund a fantasy sports platform called Unbenchable.
Okay.
And some people had heard about this little software thing that I was doing on the side and asked if they could license it. So on one hand, I was unclear and probably a little inexperienced to try to run this fantasy platform. And on the side, this thing that I did for myself, people were paying me for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just woke up one day. I was like, what am I doing? I have a business here. I scratched my own itch. People
Yeah.
are offering to pay me money for something I'm not even selling.
Wow.
And at that point, I had really decided to bootstrap this thing and use the money that I was making from some of the early customers and keep investing in the product. And that's really how Evergreen started.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely kind of feel like it seems like a very, I don't know, a typical startup story where you kind of accidentally fall into something. And especially because it was right in my wheelhouse, a lot of experience with it. And the customers that have jumped on early and the beta testers that have jumped on early have had an enormous amount of success and great feedback for me. And hopefully, and this is the tip of the iceberg. We've got lots of great plans for how to use it a lot
Right.
better and find ways to, align Evergreen customers with great pieces of content. So we can even take
I
that
love
burden.
that.
Yeah, can even take that burden off people too. So we're pretty excited about the future.
So when is version 2 coming?
Well, I'd kind of argue that like we were at version 0.1 for a long time.
Yeah.
For the very first customers, there was no front end at all. I just sent them a PayPal link
Okay.
and then another link, and they just authorized their Dropbox and their Facebook account, and it worked in the back end. There was no front end at all.
Okay.
And then sometime around like this winter, we launched something that was kind of end-to-end self-service.
Okay.
So
Yep.
for a long time, there's just a handful of customers coming in and paying with no front end. Like I said, last winter, it was finally self-service, and now working on a mobile app that's pretty exciting. Bringing on a handful of other platforms. There's been a ton of people asking for Instagram. That's probably going to be a long way away.
Oh.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to get into Instagram's API
Yeah.
program. But there's a lot of other. Obviously, Google Plus is an important one. But we're also thinking about the other types of evergreen content, not just the publishing side, but
Mhm.
the content people already own and
Mhm.
identifying that as evergreen. So as an example, for everybody that's on WordPress and have been blogging for a long time, a lot of their blog posts will really be characterized as evergreen.
Mhm.
And we're going to be bringing a WordPress plugin that will allow people to mark their blog posts as evergreen, and that will just mix in their evergreen library and randomly publish for them.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So
How do you think of these things?
Well, now got a lot of help. We've got a fair amount of customers that offer a ton of feedback, so
Awesome.
that helps. But I don't know. When I'm doing this kind of stuff, I look for things that I would love to see
Mm-hmm.
and look to see if there's products out there that do it. And I try to, even if there's products that are close, I try to actually strip away all the excess features and see what I can do to make it atomic, right? It's just
Okay.
like one simple little feature.
Right.
And if I can do that, I ask myself, all right, is there something out there like that, or do I need to build it? That's really what we're looking for. And fundamentally, like I said, Evergreen is this social media automation tool for small and medium businesses. And, I think from the mindset of somebody that knows nothing about social media,
Mm-hmm.
that understands they have to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and what tools can we bring for that person that's a little bit naive about it but absolutely needs it but doesn't have the budget or expertise to run it on their
Right.
own, and how can I service that
Right.
type of customer. And it feels a lot honestly like what building web pages did
Mm-hmm.
in like the early 2000s,
Yep.
where lots and lots of small and medium businesses were like, I know I have to have a website, but like I just don't have $2,000 to even give to my cousin's nephew
Right.
who says they can build websites, or $50,000 to some agency.
Right.
So, what is that? What is a solution that maybe is 90 to 95% as good as the top tier solution for almost none of the effort and a fraction of the cost?
I love that.
Yeah.
So listen up, kids. 3 tips for entrepreneurs and startups that you would have from, you've built several successful businesses. So a startup that's listening right now, do you have 3 like critical tips you have to think about or read or
Sure.
consume or follow or?
Sure. So, I'd say the 2 things I tell a lot of people over and over and over is scratch your own itch. Because if you're your own customer, you're gonna use your product regularly and know where the shortcomings are,
Yep.
and you'll be very motivated to fix those. Right? You're not gonna wait for somebody to tell you. But that also brings me to the second thing: is to listen to your customers. And sometimes your customers aren't going to reach out to you and tell you the things that are wrong the things that they'd like to see. So sometimes you have to proactively go out and ask them, what would you like to see, or what's not working well. And kind of on that note too is, sometimes it's really good to have an angry customer because that means they care. A lot of people will freak out about having one angry customer, but at the end of the day, having indifferent customers is a path to failure, right? If your customers don't really care, they have no loyalty, they don't get upset that something's not working right, really means that they don't care. They're just going to go out and find some other tool to meet their needs or just not use it at all.
Right.
And then, it's hard. There's 1,000 things. But on the third level, I would say, I don't fully know the audience here, but I'll say one of the things I like to do is really stay as lean as possible. I'd say one of the bigger mistakes we made at Eighth Bridge was we did overspend in some areas and we did over-engineer in some areas. And the founder of LinkedIn loves saying that if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you probably launched too late, right? And don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to get out there. Like I said, the first version of Evergreen, there was no front end. I had to send a PayPal link, and that was embarrassing for me. I'd come from a startup that had raised $17 million in capital, and we had an engineering team of dozens, right? And we were buttoned up from end to end. And by comparison, with Evergreen, I was sending out a PayPal link, and then after they paid, I'd send them another link, and that would authorize their Facebook account, and then I would send them another link, and that would authorize their Dropbox account.
Wow.
And then I'd have to still go into the database and edit it myself, and I had customers paying for that.
Yeah.
And that's a really what I could have done instead is said, no, I'm going to work for 9 months on this product, build out a front end, spend tens of thousands of dollars on this thing. But I already built what was there, and I just asked my customer, will you pay for this in its current state? And when I was getting yeses and money was actually coming in, that was a really great validation, right? That was a great validator that this was working. There was a business there, and I didn't over-engineer or overspend on the hopes that somebody would buy it. I just sold something that I already had, and that's about as lean as you can get.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm looking back at it thinking, I can't believe I did that.
And it sounds like it's going to be fairly a large service provider.
I hope so.
If you're looking at the small business community or the nonprofit community across the country, that's a pretty large.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm not really, I try not to put the cart before the horse on some of those things, right? I think a lot of people look at things like spending 4 hours in an afternoon really looking at the full market potential, and they look at, putting out, revenue projections and all that stuff. I think there's a time and a place for that, and there's, certainly when you're trying to raise capital, certainly when you're trying to validate a business with a business partner, set up partnerships,
Right.
persuade co-founders to join for, peanuts. But at the end of the day, a lot of that stuff, and I see this over and over and over, it's professional procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
People will put together business plans
Yep.
and market, like I said, market opportunities when they're spending, weeks or like logo design. I'll see people spend like 6 weeks on their logo design. They don't even have a single customer.
Yeah.
And, that kind of stuff just, puts the more important stuff, like actually getting a customer to send you actual real money.
Yeah.
That just
Validation.
yeah, it kicks the can down the road.
Yeah.
So, like I said, a lot of that stuff, I don't think too much about. Like, well, what is my market opportunity here?
Sorry, but
Yeah.
my mind just went, wow, that's pretty big.
Yeah, I hope so.
So what can our Idea to Launch community do to support you?
Well, of course, I'm looking for, I think, for lack of a better term, vociferous customers, right?
Okay.
That are open to sending real hard feedback.
Okay.
So the Evergreen's available at evergreen.to or straight to the app. You can go app.evergreen.to
Okay.
and sign up there. Right now it's a freemium model that'll be going away soon. But for those that want to just try it, you can set it up and have it publish every single day for yourselves.
Yep.
But I'm looking for customers and users that are not afraid to send me an email that says, hey, this is not working the way I expected to, or I would love to pay you to do this, except it doesn't do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And that will obviously put that at the front of the product roadmap. And becoming a customer is another way to help guide the product too, So I've got my vision for what I want the product to do, but if we get enough customers that need it to do X, Y, and Z, that's going to help a ton too. So
Right.
looking for open-minded and vocal, new, I think early customers.
I
Yeah.
love that. Perfect. So evergreen.to
Yep.
website.
Yep.
Or what was it?
App.evergreen.to.
Evergreen,
But
okay.
you'll be able to click through.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Hot Lou,
Lisa. This is
for
awesome.
hanging out with me today.
Yeah,
I
this was
appreciate
great.
your time.
I love
totally
this little
do.
studio.
Yeah. Studio Americana, again, I'll do another plug for our sponsor. It's a great professional podcasting studio. So if you're thinking about getting out there, give Ian a call. He'd be happy to help you. Just to wrap it up, thank you, Hot Lou, for joining us today. Loved having you in. Go check out evergreen.to on the web or apps evergreen.to on your phone. Check it out. I've used it. I think it's fabulous. And you just heard it from him. There's a lot of things that are coming along with that. So if you like this podcast, please like, share, comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much.